You know that one friend who just cannot relax until their house is absolutely spotless? Or maybe you're the one who thrives on a super rigid routine and kind of panics if plans change. We all have these, let's call them peculiar habits. And let's be honest, we're often way too quick to judge them, both in others and in ourselves.
But what if we've been looking at this all wrong? I mean, completely backwards. What if these things we call flaws are actually something way more sophisticated? That's what we're going to dive into.
Because here's the big idea. Many of our most intense, most rigid habits aren't mistakes. They're actually these incredibly powerful psychological tools. They are subconscious strategies that our brains have come up with to handle the absolute chaos of modern life.
So let's start with one of the biggest drivers of our behavior, this deep, almost primal need for control, right? When the world feels messy and totally unpredictable, our brains instinctively try to create order on the outside to calm down the chaos on the inside.
So let's go back to that friend, the one who doesn't just tidy up. They seem to get a genuine sense of peace, maybe even a high from organizing and cleaning. Society might just slap a label on them like clean freak, but what's happening in their brain is actually pretty brilliant.
It really all comes down to this concept called cognitive load. Think of your brain's working memory like the RAM on your computer. Every single object in your line of sight, that pile of mail, the shoes by the door, it's like a tiny open app demanding a little bit of your attention. So clutter isn't just messy, it's mentally exhausting. And this has a real physical cost. Research shows that physical clutter can literally raise cortisol, which is your body's main stress hormone. So for some people, a messy room doesn't just look bad, it feels bad on a physiological level. The act of cleaning, well, that becomes a way to regulate their emotions. Okay, so what about another type of person? This is the one who eats the exact same breakfast every day, hits the gym at the exact same time without fail, and feels this wave of anxiety if their schedule gets messed up.
Now get this, it's a staggering number. Research from Duke University suggests that a whopping 45% of our daily actions aren't conscious choices at all. They're habits, just running on autopilot. People who love their routines are just strategically leaning into how our brains are already wired.
So what does this really mean? It means they aren't boring. They're incredibly strategic. By putting all those little day-to-day decisions on autopilot, they're saving their brains very limited energy for the stuff that truly matters. They figured out that creating internal order is basically the ultimate superpower against external chaos.
All right, next up, let's look at habits that aren't so much about controlling the environment, but more about protecting who we are on the inside. This is the quest for authenticity. It's like a quiet rebellion against the constant pressure to be on all the time. You know the scene. You're at a party, someone starts talking about the weather, and you can practically see your friend's soul just pack up and leave their body. For some people, small talk isn't just boring. It feels like a performance. It feels fundamentally fake, like they're being forced to read from a script they never wanted. This resistance, it's often driven by this powerful psychological force called reactance. It's that gut instinct that kicks in the second we feel like our freedom is being threatened. It's the reason telling someone to calm down has literally never worked in the history of the world. We are just hardwired to protect our own autonomy. And you see this exact same mechanism with the person who just refuses to jump on the latest TikTok dance or social media challenge. The more they see something everywhere, the more it feels like social pressure, and their brain's defense system just puts up a wall and says, nope, not for me. But here's a really critical distinction we need to make. A contrarian's identity is shaped by the trend. Their whole focus is on being against it. An authentic non-participant, though, they're internally motivated. They aren't against the trend. They're just busy doing their own thing. They're acting from their own values, and they probably barely even notice the trend is happening. And finally, let's talk about the search for sanctuary. These are the habits we build not just to feel in control or authentic, but to create a safe space where we can actually recharge our batteries. We all know this person. They cancel plans pretty often, and they seem genuinely more excited about a Friday night in with a book than a big night out. And while it's easy to label them as antisocial, the reality might be that their home is the one and only place their nervous system can truly power down. This is what some psychologists call territorial comfort. Your home isn't just a building with a roof. It's an emotional reset button. It is the one place in the entire world that is perfectly calibrated to your nervous system. You know, the lighting, the sounds, the smells. It is your sanctuary. And this need for a perfectly calibrated sanctuary helps us understand why some people, even people who absolutely love their friends, really hate having guests over. It's not about the guests themselves, it's about the disruption they bring to that sanctuary.
See, the issue isn't being rude or antisocial. It's that a guest's presence completely changes that carefully cultivated environment. Your personal recharge station suddenly becomes a performance venue. You're not just worried about someone spilling wine on the rug, you're kind of grieving the temporary loss of your safe space. So, when you start to put all these pieces together, a much clearer and, honestly, a much more compassionate picture starts to emerge. These aren't just random quirks or weird things people do. Your habits are actually really sophisticated strategies. They're signals, telling you exactly what your nervous system desperately needs to function in a world that can be pretty overwhelming. Whether that's a need for control, a need for authenticity, or a need for a safe sanctuary to recharge. And really, that's the bottom line. When we take a moment to understand the why behind these behaviors, judgment just kind of dissolves and it turns into empathy. We stop seeing a control freak and we start seeing someone who is just trying to create a little bit of peace. We stop seeing an antisocial homebody and we see someone who is fiercely protecting their energy. And all of this leaves us with one last question to think about. That one habit of yours, the one that feels the most peculiar, maybe the one you get judged for the most. What is it really trying to tell you about what you truly need? What secret, brilliant strategy has your brain been running this whole time?